The Donald Sterling situation, that's the former owner of the LA Clippers, it seemed like it was going to be all said and done, but now it's turned into a very serious legal issue. To talk about all the different parts of it, which are quite interesting, we're joined by Mazin, trial attorney at Steckler Law. The StecklerLaw.com is the website. Mazin, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Michael.
So, putting aside the racial rant that he was recorded saying, do you have any issue as an attorney about the way the NBA was able to force him essentially to sell the team?
I think that raises a great question, which is because they actually didn't go through the vote to force him to do that. The threat of that obviously created the circumstances where the team could be sold. In terms of the legal process that they use, they've got some pretty airtight, I would say, constitutional issues in terms of the NBA Constitution, not the U.S. Constitution, that they were invoking. I don't think he played his cards nearly as well as he probably could have to protect himself.
Okay, now he didn't actually make the sale. The team was apparently owned by the Sterling Family Trust, and his wife Shelley, who shared the ownership 50-50, somehow was able to get control. How do you understand what occurred, and did it make sense to you legally that she was able to do the sale?
I think there was a little bit of a hoodwink there from what we can tell. So the trust has two trustees. It's Donald Sterling and Shelley Sterling are co-trustees. At some point, he seemed to have delegated authority to her to act solely on behalf of the trust to sell, market the team and maybe sell it. He withdrew that authority, which he's allowed to do, and so she went behind there and got him declared incompetent so that she'd become the sole ruling trustee of the family trust. The legal effect of that decision is really in question. I'm a little bit surprised that his lawyers haven't gone after that determination in order to vitiate the decision that he's somehow mentally unfit to guide his half of the affairs of the trust. I think that's going to be a legal issue that he can raise.
Have you yourself as a lawyer dealt with situations where you've had someone declared incompetent?
I've not had someone declared incompetent. I've had receivers appointed for individuals who, for one reason or another, we believe couldn't manage their own affairs, either for mental illness reasons or other reasons, that they just weren't making the right decisions because they were fiduciaries.
Yeah, how can that decision be made, especially so quickly that he is mentally incompetent to take part in the sale? You're
hitting exactly on the part that I'm kind of scratching my head about. Normally that's a judicial determination or an administrative determination at the very least. The fact that she basically was able to summarily have him declared incompetent is just highly suspect. We don't have all the facts, obviously. They haven't released the report where he was determined mentally incompetent other than the conclusion. But the fact of the matter is, if he is mentally incompetent, then almost all sins have to be forgiven at that point. So I think it's dangerous ground that Shelley and Steve Ballmer Shelley Sterling and Steve Ballmer are treading right now, given that there's not been a final judicial determination of his competency.
Steve Ballmer is the former Microsoft CEO who bought the team. Does that take several doctors confirming that usually to this incompetence?
Yeah, it usually takes a medical professional who's directly examined the person in question, and then a judicial determination that they're mentally incompetent to handle their affairs. And usually when someone's declared mentally incompetent, there's something called a guardian ad litem or a receiver that's appointed. It doesn't just shift to the other person who has a personal interest or something to be gained by them being declared incompetent. There's a lot of self-dealing there and fiduciary trust issues that can arise. It's really dangerous ground to be treading, in my opinion.
Okay, now Donald Sterling is suing the NBA for $1 billion in damages. Do you think he'll have any luck with that lawsuit?
Not for the billion. I mean, to get $1 billion, he basically is going to have to win the argument that without the NBA's actions, whatever those were, his team would have been worth $3 billion instead of the $2 billion that he could sell the team to Steve Ballmer for. That valuation seems a little bit out of whack with what we know. Maybe he'll win that aspect of it. The other part is he's made an antitrust suit out of it, which is interesting. But the first thing that's going to be litigated is the fact that this thing will have to go to arbitration, since there's an arbitration clause in the subscriber agreement with the NBA. And once it goes to arbitration, they get to choose the arbitrator, and chances are it'll die a rather quick, summary death.
I mean, it sounds like he almost opened the door for this, Donald Sterling, by giving his wife the ability to make the sale on her own. Would you say that's right?
I think that's right. Even though legally he can withdraw that authority, she acted so quickly that, I mean, it's really tied himself into a Gordian knot. To extricate himself, he's going to have to come up with something a lot better than, well, I changed my mind.
Do you have any sympathy for Donald Sterling and what he's going through now?
Sympathy? No, I've never had a $2 billion mistake in that way. But I do think I feel for the guy. I think what he's done and to get himself into this initially was reprehensible. But, you know, the argument that he's made is that, you know, he's being attacked for what he thinks, and instead of anything he's actually overtly done, I think carries a little bit of water, although sources keep coming out from the woodwork saying, well, he's done some pretty awful things. It's just that this thing became public and threatened the value of the NBA franchises that's really caused the problem. And remember, the NBA is a business decision to sort of excoriate him. I don't know that it was really a moral one. So I don't necessarily give the NBA the moral upper hand here either. They ignored him for so long. But I can't say that I fully sympathize with Donald Sterling at this point either.
Let me ask you this. If his wife had not made the sale, do you think the NBA would have been able to force him to sell the team when it was all said and done?
That's a great question. I think they would have had a lot of trouble. And the reason is that the family trust owns the team. They already banned Donald Sterling, so they've already punished him. You can imagine the NBA's, you know, tall building lawyers walking up to a federal judge and saying, well, now we want him to sell the team, even though he has nothing to do with the NBA anymore. And that judge would be there wondering, well, why? What do you have to gain? So in that regard, the NBA may have played their cards very early, but I think all that issue is, it may be unmooted if Donald Sterling can get the sale of the team enjoined and sort of get power of the trust back. Well, but I think the NBA would have had a harder time forcing a sale than everybody gave it credit for.
Yeah, somebody tells me he's gonna fight this one right to the bitter end. Mazin Sabeti,
I don't blame him.
Indeed, Mazin Sabeti, a trial attorney. Mazin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Michael Cohen, 1320 WILS.